Welcome back, you beautiful snarkers. Damn, babes, you all are amazing. We are so incredibly thrilled to be back in the studio with you because, let me tell you, this week's reality TV mess is so deeply, profoundly toxic that I am genuinely convinced it could legally be considered a level 4 biohazard.
Oh, absolutely. Like, you need a hazmat suit just to turn on the television at this point.
Literally. I mean, we are talking emotional radiation, generational trauma just seeping through the screen, and decisions that are so unhinged I actually felt my soul detached from my body while I was watching.
Right. It is a complete and utter sociological meltdown. We are basically witnessing the collapse of a family structure in real time, just, broadcast for our viewing pleasure.
Which is why, in honor of the absolute messiest Plath, the rosé wine is being poured right now. And you might be asking, is it our second glass? Yes, it is. Kim would be proud. Cheers to Kim.
Okay, wait, hold on. Let's pause the toast for a second.
Wait.
Because honestly, maybe Ethan deserves the toast more this week. Like, I'm thinking next episode we should just crack open a lukewarm, slightly dented Bud Light in his honor. That feels, significantly more appropriate for his current whole Midwestern aesthetic.
Oh my God, wait. What's the opposite of honor? Spite.
Yes, spite.
Yes, babes, in his spite. We are drinking this entirely in his spite. Because the emotional damage we are witnessing from him is just, I can't. It makes me want to scream into a throw pillow.
I mean, if we look at it strictly as a sociological study of generational dysfunction, right, it's a really tight race for who causes the most damage.
Oh, totally. Who do you even think causes the most emotional damage in this family right now?
Well, you have the parents who obviously laid the foundation of like emotional suppression and high demand control. But now you have the adult children acting out those exact same toxic patterns in the wild.
It's terrifying. But if you want to know who genuinely thrives in the chaos, I mean, that's Kim. She absorbs it like a sponge.
Oh, 100%. She uses other people's drama as a shield to deflect from her own failings. But if we are asking who needs an emergency therapy intervention the most, Ethan. Without a doubt.
Immediately. He needs to be on a couch yesterday.
Right, because Ethan's depression is like a localized gravity well. He isn't just passively sad, he literally bends the emotional physics of the room so that everyone around him has to exert massive amounts of energy just to, avoid being pulled into his void.
A localized gravity well.
Yeah.
That is terrifyingly accurate.
Yeah.
I'm just clutching my pearls over here thinking about it. Like, he walks into a room and the air just instantly gets heavy.
It drops 10 degrees.
It really does. It makes me wonder, okay, if we put this entire family in a reality TV Hunger Games scenario, logically speaking, who is surviving the longest?
Oh, that's an easy one.
Because part of me feels like Barry would just stand in the corner entirely unbothered, just outlasting everyone while they self-destruct.
See, I have a slightly different take on Barry's survival strategy. He wouldn't just stand there. He would systematically detach from reality, observe the destruction with that incredibly smug, placid expression of his.
Yes, the smile. The terrifying smile.
Right, and he would silently manipulate the environment so the others just take each other out. He would emerge victorious without having lifted a single finger, entirely convinced of his own righteousness.
That is so dark.
Meanwhile, the rest of them would be arguing over who didn't express their feelings properly while the arena just burned down around them.
I can picture it perfectly. Barry just doing deep lunges in the corner while the world ends. And, speaking of the delusion of control, like how we try to manipulate our environments and our bodies, we need to talk to the Snark Squad for a second about our own delusions today.
Oh boy, here we go.
Because we went to Pilates earlier. And babes, it was honestly a relaxing mess.
I need you to define what part of that was relaxing for you.
Because
I would describe it more as disguised medieval torture. It is literally a rack.
okay, it was hard, but
You strap yourself into a contraption with heavy-duty springs and leather loops, and they systematically isolate and destroy every muscle in your body while playing, like, atmospheric indie pop. There is nothing relaxing about your core actively failing.
okay, fair. The physical part was absolute agony. But the vibe. Why did TikTok convince everyone this was a fun, cute aesthetic?
Because of the outfits.
Exactly. I was
Yeah.
fully committed, okay?
Yeah.
I bought the matching sage green set. I got the little grip socks with the smiley faces on the heels. I was ready to be a wellness queen.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to float out of there holding an ice green juice, looking like a glowing beacon of health.
Instead, you were just trembling.
I was literally suffering. My legs were shaking so hard on that reformer that I thought the machine was going to break, and I felt emotionally betrayed by my own body. Like, why are we romanticizing fitness while we are literally suffering and shaking?
Well, it connects perfectly to the psychological themes we see on reality TV, right?
Yeah.
It's the desperate desire for a quick fix wrapped in a socially acceptable aesthetic.
Oh, wow. Yes.
The betrayal you felt is profound because you went in expecting um, a gentle, elongating stretch based on a 15-second curated video.
Mm.
And then 10 minutes later, you are questioning every life choice that led you to this moment.
I really was. I was staring at the ceiling, rethinking my entire existence.
It really makes you analyze the whole Pilates girl phenomenon. I am deeply suspicious of it. It operates exactly like a secret cult.
A cult. Yes.
Why do they always seem so emotionally stable? What are they hiding behind that perfectly slicked back bun? You cannot endure that level of physical torment and be completely well-adjusted.
But wait, don't you think part of it is just the shared delusion we all buy into? I will fully confess this right now to the Snark Squad. I just want toned abs without putting in any actual effort.
Oh, obviously. We all do.
I want to lie down on a mat, do 3 little leg circles, and wake up looking like a fitness model. And the worst part is we both walked out of there completely unable to feel our thighs, pretending that this one single Pilates class had fundamentally changed our lives forever.
The delusion was strong.
I literally caught myself looking in the studio mirror like, oh yes, my posture's entirely different now. I am a completely new woman.
We are both highly susceptible to the placebo effect of a single wellness activity. The reality is, we paid a premium to be publicly humbled by a very calm 20-something instructor named Chloe, who didn't even break a sweat while telling us to pulse for 10.
Chloe was a menace. A sweet, quiet menace.
It's an expensive punishment, wrapped in the guise of self-care. It's the illusion of control. We think if we can just master the reformer springs, we can master our messy lives.
The illusion of control, yes. Which is exactly why we need distractions. And speaking of distractions, we checked the comments. And babes, you all came through with hobby suggestions.
Oh, they certainly did.
We asked the Snark Squad what we should do this summer to have a life outside of dissecting reality TV drama. And you delivered the messiest list possible. Let me just read some of these. We got pottery, pole dancing, paddleboarding, birdwatching, and DJ classes.
I am already emotionally exhausted just thinking about the logistical nightmare of these suggestions. Like, let's break this down analytically.
Okay, let's do it.
We have a clear divide here between the illusion of glamour and the reality of absolute terror.
See, I am completely open to trying almost everything on this list. I feel like DJing sounds so glamorous. Imagine us in Ibiza, spinning tracks, the crowd is going wild, we have those cool, oversized headphones on, living our absolute best lives.
Let me stop you right there.
What?
Because your brain is doing the TikTok Pilates thing again.
Oh my God, I am.
You are jumping straight to the aesthetic end goal. The reality of DJ classes is not Ibiza. The reality is us in a poorly ventilated community center room on a Tuesday night trying to figure out how to crossfade a transition between a Dua Lipa song and some obscure 90s track without blowing out the speakers.
Well, a guy named Chad critiques our beat matching.
Exactly. And the terror. We haven't even talked about the absolute terror of paddleboarding.
What is terrifying about paddleboarding? You just stand on a board on a calm lake. It's serene. It's nature.
Serene until you lose your balance. Imagine falling off a paddleboard in front of a crowd of judgmental beachgoers. The lack of dignity.
Okay, the following part would be bad.
The flailing in the water, trying to haul yourself back up onto a slippery piece of fiberglass. The sheer public embarrassment of it all. No thank you. I do not volunteer for public humiliation.
Okay, I see your point of the flailing, but what about pottery? That feels so grounded, so earthy. But honestly, which of these would absolutely humble us the most?
Pottery, without a doubt.
Because I know exactly what's going to happen. We are going to accidentally develop full, insufferable personalities around one random activity just to become hobby girls for the summer.
Oh, we would be a nightmare.
I will buy the imported clay, the linen apron, the special wooden carving tools, and I will make one lopsided bowl and suddenly pretend I am a master artisan who only drinks out of handmade ceramics.
Pottery would absolutely humble us because, again, you are picturing the aesthetic. You're picturing that perfectly lit, soothing scene in Ghost.
Yes.
But in reality, the physics of a pottery wheel are completely unforgiving. You end up covered in wet dirt, aggressively fighting a spinning wheel that is actively trying to throw a lump of clay across the room, and you end up producing something that looks like an abstract heavy ashtray.
It's so true. I would cry at the wheel.
But I completely agree about the insufferable personalities. If we took pole dancing, we would instantly start analyzing the physics of friction and core strength to anyone who would listen at dinner parties. The ego check would be spectacular.
We would be a nightmare, a total nightmare. But you know who is an even bigger nightmare? The person in our inbox.
Oh, the inbox this week was wild.
Because before we get to the Plathville biohazard, we also got a listener submission that was so messy we had to share it. We asked for your workplace and friendship trauma, and wow, the Snark Squad delivered.
This one is a masterclass in rewriting reality to suit your own narrative. It is a stunning case study in terrible decision-making and cognitive dissonance.
It really is. Okay, let me set the scene for you guys. Our listener writes in that she convinced her work bestie to move entirely across the country. Like, packed up her apartment, broke her lease, shipped her car, all for this amazing new promotion at their company.
A massive life change.
Huge. But then our listener applied for that exact same promotion behind her bestie's back, got the job, and somehow ended up dating the work bestie's situationship on top of it.
It's breathtaking.
And the wildest part, she wrote to us saying she genuinely believed she was doing the bestie a quote-unquote career favor by forcing her to look for even better opportunities outside the company now that the internal door is closed.
The sheer audacity. So the debate we have to have is, were they being shady, snarky, or just plain stupid?
Right.
Because analytically speaking, the mental gymnastics required to reframe stealing a promotion and intercepting a romantic partner as a benevolent career favor is bordering on sociopathic. It is instantly, undeniably shady.
Okay, wait, let me play devil's advocate for just 1 second.
I knew you were going to try this.
I always try to find the emotionally sympathetic angle first.
Mm.
I'm looking for the misunderstood feelings here. Like, maybe the situationship was really toxic for the bestie, and our listener was secretly saving her from a bad romance by taking the bullet.
Taking the bullet by dating him.
And maybe the listener really thought the bestie was too talented for that specific promotion and was stagnating. I mean, I know I'm reaching so hard I might pull a hamstring.
You are reaching so far you are in another dimension right now. Let's look at the empirical facts of the timeline. Fact 1. She actively encouraged the relocation for a role she already intended to sabotage.
True.
Fact 2. She intercepted the romantic prospect. This isn't a misunderstanding. It is a calculated, hostile takeover of this woman's entire life.
It really is an evil genius move.
It's not stupid because it clearly took strategic planning to execute. It is pure, unadulterated shade wrapped in a delusion of altruism. The listener is the villain of this story, and she is using the language of empowerment to mask her own ruthless ambition.
You're right. I can't even defend it. It is a full villain origin story. I just feel so bad for the bestie who is now sitting in a new city with no promotion, no situationship, and a broken lease. It's the ultimate betrayal because it was disguised as friendship.
Exactly.
Honestly, it sounds like the exact kind of emotional manipulation Kim Plath would pull on a family member while smiling and saying it's God's plan.
The transition is seamless.
Which brings us perfectly to the absolute core of our existence today. Let's get into the recap. Welcome to Plathville, Season 8, Episode 8, Up Creek Without a Paddle. Or as the screeners apparently titled it, just Up Creek.
Which is grammatically infuriating, but entirely fitting for the chaotic state of this family right now. The narrative flow of this episode is deeply jarring.
Total whiplash.
We are bouncing from the absolute oppressive misery of the Montana trip to the bizarre formal therapy speak of Tallahassee to the passive-aggressive standoff in Cairo and ending in the grim, frozen wasteland of Wisconsin.
It's so much, and I am dying to spill the tea because there is so much happening off-camera in real time that completely colors exactly what we are seeing on screen.
Like always.
But before we dive in, let's establish our crucial rule right now. For the entire Snark Squad listening, you will be shading absolutely everyone in this family mercilessly today, except Lydia, Zach, and Moriah.
Yes.
They are the only good things about this family. They must be protected at all costs. We are wrapping them in bubble wrap and putting them on a high shelf.
Agreed. They are the only ones displaying even a fraction of self-awareness or genuine emotional growth. The rest of the family members are completely fair game, and frankly, their behavior demands rigorous critique today.
Absolutely.
So let's start with the absolute biggest, most explosive tea of the week that just dropped outside the show. Because if you aren't monitoring the Reddit threads, you are missing the sociological irony of a lifetime.
Yes. The IG reveal. I am spiraling. I am celebrating. I am literally screaming at my phone. Teegan posted her new man on Instagram today. He is free, babes.
She escaped.
She found someone new. She looks incredible. She's taking these super cute growing bathroom selfies. And apparently, according to the Reddit snarkers, who have zoomed in on every pixel and cross-referenced the reflections. It is a black man.
Which is where the profound sociological irony comes into play here. Now, obviously, we are simply reporting on the public discourse here, not endorsing any specific political stance.
Wait, it's just reading the room.
Exactly. But when you consider the deep-seated alleged prejudices within the Plath family, I mean, we've all seen the discussions online, the theories about Ethan's underlying beliefs, the controversial social media likes, and the family's incredibly isolated fundamentalist background.
The vibes have always been questionable.
Highly questionable. If this Reddit consensus is true, this visual is going to send Ethan into an absolute categorical meltdown. The threads are already predicting the crash out.
Oh, the crash out is going to be epic. I am terrified for her peace of mind, honestly, because Ethan is already acting so unhinged on the show. But I am also just so incredibly happy she is out of that toxicity and thriving. Because look at what she was dealing with.
It was grim.
Let's talk about the Wisconsin stalker situation. Ethan's new living situation in Wisconsin. Babes, I paused the TV, I had to zoom in. It is a single sleeping bag on the floor and a flushing toilet. That is it. That is the layer.
It is the architectural embodiment of depression. But more than that, it is a textbook example of learned helplessness.
Wait, explain learned helplessness to me in this context, because to me it just looks like he's lazy and refuses to go to an IKEA.
Well, learned helplessness is a psychological condition where a person suffers from a sense of powerlessness, arising from a traumatic event or persistent failure to succeed.
Okay, tracking.
Because Ethan was raised in an environment by Kim and Barry where independent action was routinely punished or overridden, his brain literally perceives his own agency as a threat. So he moves across the country, ostensibly to win back a woman with a child, but he hasn't bothered to procure a single piece of furniture. He sits in a sleeping bag waiting to be rescued because passivity feels safer to him than action. It is a calculated, albeit subconscious, attempt to garner pity. It's weaponized incompetence. It's not a home, it's a trap.
Oh my God. Weaponized incompetence. That makes so much sense. I physically shuddered at the romantic delusion of it all. Like, he invites an ex-girlfriend and her daughter over to a house with zero furniture.
Welcome to my floor.
Right, like, welcome to my romantic sleeping bag on the floor. Don't you want to co-parent your child in this desolate echo chamber? It is the terminal case of the ick. The ick is so strong, it has mutated into a biohazard.
And this brings us to the conflicting narratives of the Christmas incident, which is arguably the most disturbing manifestation of his behavior yet. We have two wildly different accounts of reality being presented to the audience right now.
Let's break it down for everyone. Because Teegan's story is that Ethan texted her on Christmas, clearly fishing for an invite to her family's house. She, protecting her peace and her child, says no to him coming inside. She sets a firm boundary, but says she will hand him a plate of leftovers outside the house so he isn't entirely alone on the holiday.
Which is generous.
Very. She hands him the food, and he leaves. Simple, firm boundary respected.
Right. That is the reality of a boundary. But then we hear Kim's version of events in her confessional. According to Kim and presumably Ethan, since she is acting as his PR mouthpiece, Ethan tragically waited in a public park in his car for hours on Christmas Day, like a martyr.
Just hovering in the frozen area, hoping they would sense his presence and invite him into open presence. He's acting like a localized black hole, just draining the joy from the entire Midwest.
A mentor.
Yes, a goblin ghost walking around moping in the snow. It is so incredibly creepy. Instead of driving back to Minnesota, where he has grandparents who love him, or going back to the farm in Cairo, he chooses to sit in a freezing car in eyeshot of her house.
It's chilling.
Teegan's mother, Rebecca, was completely spot on. She looked right at the camera and said he needs deep, deep healing. Because think about his timeline here. He jumped from his parents' isolated, highly controlled farm right into a teenage marriage with Olivia, where Olivia had to do all the heavy lifting of showing him the world.
She managed everything for him.
Everything. And now he's trying to do the exact same thing to Teegan. He wants a new mother figure. He has no idea who he actually is.
Precisely. And I heavily applaud Teegan's strict boundaries here. She explicitly noted to the cameras that letting anyone around her child is a privilege that must be earned, not a right that is granted just because you exist.
So true.
And there are massive contextual clues being dropped by production that Ethan did something. They called it a private matter in front of her child that crossed a massive line.
That part was so cryptic.
Whether it was a display of disproportionate anger, the alleged drinking issues people theorize about on Reddit, or severe emotional abandonment, she shut the door. And his response isn't to apologize or seek therapy. His response is to sulk in a park. It is manipulative.
It really is. It's coercive control dressed up as sadness. And we saw that exact same sulking, moody behavior on the Montana trip. The misery in Montana.
Oh, the ATV ride.
So the gang is all there. Isaac, Kaylynn, Moriah, Ethan, and Teegan. They go on this boogie ride in the dirt. First of all, Teegan is absolutely terrified, and I completely sympathize with her. We all know someone who has had a terrible ATV accident. But Ethan, for once in his adult life, actually drives slowly because she asked him to.
Which is the absolute bare minimum of human decency when operating a motor vehicle, yet it's framed by the show as this monumental achievement.
Like he deserves a medal.
Why? Because his baseline behavior, as Olivia has exhaustively documented in previous seasons, is usually ignoring his partner's pleas to slow down, doing donuts in parking lots, and intentionally scaring the women in his life for his own amusement.
Exactly. We've seen him do it so many times, but then they get out to the rocks, and instead of just enjoying the view, he is just badgering her for couples photos. He begs for pictures, and she is visibly annoyed.
Visibly repulsed.
She's telling him to back up, give her space, and he's just lurking behind her shoulder like a shadow. I felt the ick radiating through the television. You could tell she was just totally repulsed by the desperation of it all.
It's because he only wants to perform the actions of a relationship now that he has unequivocally lost it. Teegan points out the agonizing irony, right? When they were actually together, she begged him to take pictures, to make an effort to travel to see her.
And he did nothing.
He did none of it. He was entirely passive. Now that she has emotionally divested and pulled away, he is suddenly the ultimate tourist of love, snapping photos and making grand, hollow gestures. It's too little, entirely too late.
Totally. But amidst all that misery, can we just pause and highlight Moriah and Isaac climbing the rocks? We promised to protect them, and this is why. Moriah is up there. Her energy is so lively. She loves being high up, which she hilariously had to reword in her confessional for production, so it didn't sound like she was talking about weed.
That was a great catch by her. So funny. And it was just such a beautiful, stark contrast to Ethan's brooding. They actually have a zest for life.
Yes, Moriah and Isaac are actively engaging with their environment. They're appreciating the view, expressing a genuine desire to explore the world. Isaac is talking about his flight school ambitions and his dreams of finding farmland. They have forward momentum.
While Ethan is just stuck.
Ethan, meanwhile, is entirely consumed by his own internal rain cloud, refusing to look at anything but his own shoes.
Which leads us to the most excruciating scene of the entire season. Maybe of reality TV history. The awkward hot chocolate, oh my God.
A masterclass in discomfort.
So Teegan finally leaves for the airport. She is free, and it's just Ethan, Moriah, Isaac, and Kaylynn sitting at the table in the lodge.
It is a cinematic masterpiece of intense discomfort.
Oh.
Keep in mind, 3 of these people are siblings raised in the exact same household, and they lack the fundamental communication skills to fill the air with basic pleasantries. It was a full minute of dead silence. A full 60 seconds. I literally timed it. You just hear the slurping of the whipped cream from the mugs. Isaac tries, bless his heart, he really tries to be the host.
They threw a lifeline.
He looks at his brother and asks, "So Ethan, did you feel any different from the beginning of the trip to the end?" A total softball question. And Ethan, staring blankly into the abyss like the DDD screensaver logo bouncing around his brain, just says, "I don't know."
And then more silence.
More silence. Ethan contributes absolutely nothing. He doesn't even jump in on Isaac's awkward joke about Kaylynn licking the whipped cream off her lip.
See, that specific detail is the ultimate indicator of Ethan's severely depressive state. Historically speaking, if there is a lowbrow, vaguely suggestive joke to be made about whipped cream, Ethan is front and center.
Oh, 100%.
The fact that he let a crude joke slide by without a single smirk or comment shows he is completely dissociated from reality. He is making everyone around him miserable, pulling them into that gravity well. And Moriah's confessional response to this dinner is iconic.
Oh, Moriah sits there in her confessional and literally says she wishes they could just push Ethan into the freezing river for a cold punch to wake him up. And honestly, no shade to Moriah, because we would all want to push him in the river at that point. We are begging for a cold plunge.
A necessary reset.
She gives him great advice at the table, gently telling him to give Teegan space. But he is not listening. He's just going to go back to his sleeping bag, stare at the drywall, and wait for his mom.
His inability to process emotions or heed rational advice is staggering. He is trapped in a negative feedback loop of his own misery. But transitioning from the deeply uncomfortable to the surprisingly wholesome, we must move the narrative to Tallahassee.
Yes, we have to talk about our girl Lydia. We are protecting Lydia at all costs. So Lydia meets up with her friend Moriah, and note for the Snark squad, this is Moriah with an A, her friend from church, not Moriah with an O, her sister.
Can we just pause on how confusing it is that she has a sister named Moriah and a best friend named Moriah, but yes, Moriah with an A. They meet at a coffee shop, and the dialogue between these two young women is utterly fascinating from a linguistic standpoint.
It was so bizarrely formal. It was like corporate therapy speak mixed with youth group terminology. Moriah asks how she's doing, and Lydia smiles and says, well, I'm enjoying marriage, discovering marriage. Who talks like that to their best friend over an iced latte?
Nobody.
It sounded like they were reading directly from a premarital counseling workbook they bought at a Christian bookstore.
It is the language of people who have been entirely sheltered from mainstream culture and are only now learning to articulate complex adult experiences. Because they don't have the casual vernacular for intimacy, they rely on clinical or overly spiritualized phrasing. Moriah literally says to the camera, I think her friends have sponsored a safe space for her. You sponsor a highway cleanup or a 5K charity run, you don't sponsor a friend's emotional growth. But semantically odd as it is, the intention behind the words is incredibly positive.
So positive. They are actively trying to help her become a functioning, emotionally expressive adult in the real world.
And we absolutely defend Lydia's growth here, because look at where she started on this show. We first met her singing in the closet and putting sticky notes of desperate prayers all over the walls of the Cairo house. She was the family Cinderella.
And now she's setting actual boundaries. She talked about how Zach was so patient with her on their wedding night. He told her, I'm here to serve you, and that they were going to go entirely at her pace for physical intimacy.
Which is huge.
He didn't pressure her. He was willing to wait a week, just making out if that's what she needed to feel safe.
That is highly commendable, especially given the strict patriarchal purity culture structures they were raised in. The expectation in those circles is often immediate compliance. Zach allowing her to dictate the pacing and explicitly prioritizing her comfort over his own expectation is a massive departure from the generational trauma we see elsewhere in the Plath family. It's a genuine, glowing bright spot in a very dark season.
It really is.
Yeah.
I love Zach for her. But babes, we have to talk about the visual. The banana incident, I was hysterically laughing on my couch.
Oh, the framing was deliberate.
Production made the most bizarre, chaotic, shady choice I have ever seen on TLC. They have Lydia sitting in her interview chair talking so earnestly about the beauty of God-honoring sex and how intimacy is literally life-giving, and she is casually eating a giant banana the entire time.
Taking massive, deliberate bites.
Massive bites, just chewing and talking about marital intimacy. You cannot tell me the producers didn't know exactly what they were doing with that framing. They totally set her up.
Yeah.
But it was simultaneously the most innocent and the most chaotic thing on television.
Right.
She is so completely pure and sheltered that he doesn't even realize the visual innuendo of what she's holding. And you can literally hear the producer off camera giggling, asking, are you doing that on purpose?
It's brilliant reality television editing. It underscores her total lack of media training or cynicism, which is genuinely refreshing in 2026. But it also highlights the stark contrast between her sheltered perspective and the way the audience perceives the world.
Yeah, totally.
However, the contrast between Lydia's wholesome progression and the absolute toxicity occurring back at the Cairo farmhouse is staggering.
Oh my God, the Cairo chaos. I need a sip of rosé before we talk about this because I'm still recovering. We have to break down this deeply uncomfortable standoff between Ken and Kim.
It was rough.
For anyone needing a quick refresher, Kim left Barry, the patriarch, who controlled their fundamentalist lifestyle for decades, only to immediately attach herself to Ken. And now they sit down at the farmhouse table. Ken has his mouth seemingly full of chewing tobacco, sounding like a disgruntled alligator swamp tour guide, and decides this is the moment to call her out on her weight.
Let's analyze the mechanics of this confrontation because it is deeply manipulative. Ken states that he wants to live at the farm forever, but he has quote-unquote concerns. He then issues a direct ultimatum disguised as health advocacy.
It's so gross.
He claims her lack of exercise is a deal breaker because it shows a lack of commitment to the relationship as a whole. The logical leap there is astounding.
It is so manipulative. He is tying her physical body size directly to her capacity to love him. He literally says he wants to be together forever, but only if forever isn't cut short by diabetes. And Kim, I have to say, the death glare she gave him.
If looks could kill.
The subtle, tight-lipped, You could see the gears turning in her head, calculating exactly how to destroy him in the long game.
She was absolutely furious, and rightfully so. Ken is not exactly the pinnacle of fitness himself. He has remained at his baseline physical state, while aggressively demanding she undergo a massive physical transformation to prove her worth to him. It's a classic control tactic.
Exactly. And then the excuses from Kim start pouring out. And look, I do relate to Kim on one level.
Yeah.
Okay. Being a woman in your 50s, dealing with menopause, your hormones completely out of whack after carrying and birthing 9 children, losing weight is incredibly daunting. It's not like shedding 10 pounds in your 20s.
The biological reality is difficult.
I sympathize with the biological struggle of midlife. But then she completely ruins my sympathy by looking at the camera and saying she couldn't work out for the last month because she had to take 3 stray cats to Tallahassee to get fixed.
The cat excuse is a classic Kim Plath deflection tactic. It is a minor logistical errand that she inflates into an insurmountable barrier preventing any physical activity for weeks.
It makes no sense.
It highlights the profound hypocrisy of Kim. She spent decades demanding absolute obedience, rigorous structure, and flawlessness from her children. She literally banned sugar from their entire childhoods. But the moment she is asked to hold herself accountable to a simple 20-minute exercise routine, she crumbles and fabricates bizarre excuses about feline veterinary care.
The hypocrisy is off the charts.
Mm-hmm.
She used to make Lydia clean the Airbnbs, take care of the littles, cook the meals, and basically run the entire household while Kim did what? Sat around. And now she can't find 20 minutes to walk on a treadmill in her own house. And Ken just ruthlessly points out that the exercise room has been completely empty for 2 weeks. He clocked her.
He did. And what is fascinating is the immediate aftermath of this confrontation. Instead of resolving the issue, validating his poorly expressed concerns, or even having a productive argument about boundaries, Kim executes the ultimate avoidance maneuver. She packs her bags.
The Great Wisconsin Escape. This was absolute cinema. Instead of dealing with Ken's ultimatum, she packs her minivan to, quote-unquote, check on Ethan. She deflects entirely. Oh, my son is depressed in Wisconsin. I must immediately abandon my failing relationship and drive 15 hours across the country to micromanage his failing relationship.
It is textbook triangulation.
Wait, hold on. Explain triangulation to me, because I thought triangulation meant pitting 2 people against each other, like a love triangle. How is driving to Wisconsin triangulating Ken?
In psychological terms, triangulation happens when a person avoids direct communication or conflict with one person by bringing a third person into the dynamic to absorb the anxiety.
Oh, I see.
Kim cannot control her dynamic with Ken right now because he has challenged her. So rather than face that loss of control, she shifts her focus to a third party, Ethan and Teegan, where she assumes she has absolute authority. By rushing to quote-unquote save Ethan, she makes herself the hero of a different narrative, thereby neutralizing the anxiety of failing in her narrative with Ken.
Wow. Okay, so she uses Ethan's trauma to regulate her own ego. That is wildly toxic. And while she is fleeing, we see Ken's response. It is the absolute epitome of passive-aggressive retaliation.
The man cave.
The man cave. The second Kim's minivan leaves the Cairo driveway, Ken doesn't call her, he doesn't apologize, he doesn't text. He immediately begins moving heavy furniture and taking over the shared farmhouse, transforming it into his personal domain.
It is a territorial claim. He is physically manifesting his resentment. He is showing her that if she vacates the space emotionally, he will conquer it physically.
It is so incredibly toxic. And while all this chaos is happening, the siblings left behind are just rolling their eyes. Moriah and Lydia see right through it. They state plainly to the cameras that they know it's not a rescue mission for Ethan, it's Kim running away from Ken. And we get the jump scare of the episode. The dramatic violin music swells.
The editing during her cross-country drive was phenomenal. It was paced like a true crime documentary.
It really was. The dark, ominous music, and the camera cuts to Kim driving. And it bathes the makeup. The droopy, heavy black eyeliner look. It was giving full Corey Richins' side part. She looked like the Wicked Witch flying her minivan into the Midwest. She looked exhausted, waxy, and just aggressively miserable.
Which perfectly sets the stage for her arrival. She shows up at Ethan's sleeping bag sanctuary, ambushes Teegan, who happens to be there dropping something off, and aggressively demands to know what's up with their relationship.
The nerve.
She is completely tone deaf to the reality that Teegan is actively trying to establish boundaries with her son.
And Teegan shuts her down. Teegan does not play. She flat out looks at Kim and says, "We are a step under friends right now." Basically telling Kim to pack up her eyeliner and mind her own business. It was glorious to watch someone finally not bow down to Kim.
And while Kim is failing to control the narrative in Wisconsin, back home in Cairo, we are subjected to a scene that should legitimately come with a viewer discretion warning.
Oh God, Barry in the sauna. I am still traumatized. I need to bleach my eyes.
Barry Plath, sitting in a tiny, cramped wooden sauna with his son-in-law Zach, dripping with sweat, staring intensely and uttering the phrase, "You don't realize you're in the presence of the Plath Daddy."
Plath Daddy. I shrieked. I literally threw my phone across the room. Zach's face was frozen in pure, unadulterated terror. Zach literally said to him, "I will never call you that."
No one should ever call him that.
Barry is so smugly detached, he is watching Kim's life completely spiral out of control. Her relationship with Ken fracturing, her fleeing across the country, and he is just sitting there in the heat, working out, feeling entirely superior. He told the cameras that Kim running away from Ken just proves he wasn't the problem in their marriage.
It is deeply arrogant, but from a purely analytical standpoint, he isn't entirely wrong in his assessment of the pattern. Kim's erratic behavior validates his narrative that she is the chaotic variable, and he isn't the only one feeling validated right now. We have to briefly mention the alleged off-screen reaction from Olivia.
Yes, the vindication of Olivia Plath. For the new Snarkers, Olivia was Ethan's first wife, who finally escaped this madness a few seasons ago. And allegedly, according to the Reddit Snarkers, Olivia is sitting back watching this entire season air, completely unbothered, sipping her own rosé and feeling utterly vindicated.
As she should.
She is watching Ethan repeat his exact toxic patterns with Teegan, the emotional shutdown, the erratic cross-country moves, the inability to communicate, the weaponized incompetence, and she knows she made the right choice to leave. And she is supposedly scoffing at Kim driving to Wisconsin because Olivia dealt with Kim's extreme boundary crossing and manipulation for years.
Olivia's perspective serves as the control group for this sociological experiment. She removed herself from the radioactive toxicity and can now observe the dysfunction objectively from the outside. The patterns are glaringly obvious. Ethan's depression is severe, yes, but it is routinely weaponized against the women in his life to force them into a caretaking role.
It really is. It's sad, but it's destructive. And before we move to our segments, we have to quickly map out the tragedy of Isaac and Kaylynn, because this family just repeats the exact same mistakes generation after generation.
The timeline is tragic and demonstrates a profound lack of executive function. Isaac introduces Kaylynn, who is older and seemingly very stable. They go Instagram official, he calls her a keeper on camera. Then suddenly, he gets in his own head.
Because of a coworker named Mario. Mario at the flight school gets in Isaac's head, telling him he's way too young to settle down, and Isaac, having no inner compass of his own, just abruptly blindsides Kaylynn and breaks up with her, and almost immediately he regrets it.
The impulsivity is a hallmark of the Plath upbringing. Because they were shielded from normal adolescent social dynamics, they lack the tools for measured, rational decision-making regarding complex interpersonal relationships. He drops her based on one conversation with a flight instructor, immediately regrets the loss of connection, and now, during that horrific silent dinner we discussed earlier, they are forced to endure each other's agonizing presence. The regret is palpable, but the damage to her trust is done.
The damage is so done. Okay, babes, my head is spinning from all this mess.
Yeah.
We need to categorize this chaos. Let's move into segment 1, Messiest Plath ranking. We have to rank the family members we discussed today from least chaotic to absolute menace.
This requires a highly structured criteria. We are judging based on the ripple effect of their actions and their utter lack of self-awareness.
Exactly. Okay, at the bottom, the least chaotic, the absolute angels of the episode, Moriah, Lydia, and Zach. They're minding their business, discovering marriage with bananas, and climbing rocks in Montana. Above them, maybe Isaac. He made a messy, impulsive choice with Kaylynn, but he at least shows genuine remorse at the table.
Isaac is collateral damage of his upbringing, yes. He is messy but not malicious. Above him, I place Barry. He isn't actively causing chaos this week, but his smug detachment and his self-appointed Plath Daddy moniker introduce a level of psychological warfare that cannot be ignored.
So true. Okay, the top two. Has to be Kim and Ethan. But who was the absolute menace I have to argue for Kim at the top, the cross-country ambush.
Right.
Fleeing a fight about her own accountability to go interrogate her son's ex-girlfriend in a house with no furniture, using her son's depression as an excuse to avoid her boyfriend, that is top-tier calculated menace behavior.
I must counter that argument.
Really?
Kim is a menace, yes, but she is highly predictable. We know her playbook. Ethan takes the crown this week. Ethan's chaos is insidious. The sleeping bag lair, the Christmas park stalking. He is actively traumatizing Teegan by refusing to process his own grief and instead projecting it onto her in the form of silent, brooding manipulation. He is an emotional biohazard pulling innocent people into his orbit. Ugh, you make such a good point. The Christmas park stalking is just too dark to ignore. Okay, Ethan is the absolute menace of the week, which leads perfectly into segment 2, who needs therapy most? I mean, we could just write a group referral and ask for a bulk discount, but let's debate who needs to be on the couch immediately unpacking their trauma.
Again, the entire family requires intense, prolonged intervention. But focusing on the acute crisis, Ethan's inability to process emotions and his bizarre lack of self-awareness puts him at the absolute top of the triage list. He doesn't know how to exist without a partner, yet he lacks the foundational skills to maintain a partnership. He needs to figure out who Ethan Plath actually is, absent of Kim's control, Olivia's influence, or Teegan's presence. He really does. He needs a therapist to just hand him a journal and say, write down one single feeling that isn't, I don't know. But honestly, I think Kim needs it just as much. She needs a therapist to sit her down and explain what deflection is. She uses everyone else's drama to avoid looking in the mirror, literally and figuratively. She needs to unpack why she demands perfection from her kids, but settles for Ken and a messy man cave.
With a valid point. Her narcissistic tendencies are a defense mechanism that a professional would have an absolute field day dissecting. Now, segment 3. Could we survive Plathville? Let's spiral about whether we could realistically handle that lifestyle for even 24 hours.
Oh, absolutely not. First of all, the sheer amount of silence. I cannot handle silence. If I sat at a dinner table and nobody spoke for a full 60 seconds, I would start reciting the entire script of Legally Blonde just to fill the air.
Darn.
And the lack of sugar. Growing up with no TV, I would simply perish.
The physical deprivation is one thing, but the psychological warfare is what would break me. Imagine Barry lurking around the corners of the farmhouse, completely silent, just watching you with that slight, unblinking smile. And then suddenly leaning in and whispering, "Plath, Daddy." I would pack a bag faster than Kim and flee into the night. I do not have the emotional fortitude to navigate their specific brand of passive aggression.
I would start throwing things. I really would. And speaking of physical struggles, let's hit our final segment, segment 4, TikTok wellness versus real life. Because this connects perfectly to our Pilates spiral at the beginning of the show and Kim and Ken's horrific weight conversation. Which wellness trends are actually helpful and which are complete nonsense?
Ken's approach is the ultimate nonsense, demanding instant weight loss, issuing ultimatums based on body size, and expecting massive physiological changes without offering any systemic support is the absolute antithesis of wellness. It is purely punitive. True wellness is not an aesthetic standard imposed by an external force. It is functional health and emotional safety.
Wait, say more about that. Because Ken framed it as being concerned for her health.
He framed it that way, but the mechanism of delivery was a threat. Lose weight or I leave. That spikes cortisol, induces shame, and triggers Kim's avoidance mechanisms. It doesn't promote wellness, it promotes panic.
Yes, exactly. Ken is the human equivalent of a toxic TikTok trend that promises you'll lose 10 pounds in a week if you drink salt water and manifest it. It's punishing and gross. Real wellness is what Zach did for Lydia, creating a safe space, reducing pressure, allowing someone to move at their own pace without ultimatums. And real wellness is us admitting that Pilates is really hard, our thighs hurt, and we are going to drink our rosé anyway because balance is key.
Precisely. A balanced ecosystem of effort and realistic expectations. Unlike the Plath family ecosystem, which is fundamentally structurally broken.
It is so broken, babes.
Eh.
But we love dissecting it with you. Thank you so much to the Snark Squad for hanging out with us through this absolute biohazard of an episode. We survived the sleeping bag lair, the awkward hot chocolate silence, and the Plath Daddy jump scare together.
Barely. The psychological toll of this analysis is significant, but pulling apart the mechanisms of this mess is always illuminating.
It really is. So, we need you to hit the comments right now. We are asking you directly. Which messy hobby should we actually try this summer? Are we becoming insufferable pottery girls? Or are we falling off paddle boards in front of teenagers? Who do you think the messiest Plath really is? Is Ethan the ultimate menace, or does Kim take the crown for the Wisconsin ambush?
And we also need your analytical take on this. Is Pilates actually wellness, or is it just an expensive, aesthetically pleasing punishment? Because the data on my end is still inconclusive.
And most importantly, what is your favorite rosé recommendation for our next viewing? Because we're going to need a lot of it to get through the rest of this season. Remind yourselves to like, comment, and subscribe, because we are breaking down every single chaotic moment with you.
If we can survive the sociological fallout of this family, we can survive anything.
Stay messy, stay toned, and we will see you on the Snark side.